The Danganronpa series is no stranger to side content, whether it be from tons of manga to stage plays to light novels. There's a lot of bases you could potentially cover when diving into the wild world of spin-off material. While my Danganronpa retrospective is basically just aimed to cover the majority of the main series releases on consoles, and soon the anime conclusion to the original series storyline, I've been working my butt off lately, so I figured taking a little diversion to some side material might make a worthy buffer for this month, so that you guys aren't left wanting for more evil bear content in the meantime. And today's entry is very much worth looking at, despite its non-canon disposition, because despite being fairly short and sweet, Danganronpa IF is no slouch. In fact, I believe it fulfills a pretty fundamental role that the DR series was lacking at this stage, and that's giving more spotlight and focus to the mysterious super high school level soldier, Mukuro Ikusaba. If you'll recall, we didn't actually know that much about Ikusaba in DR1, other than that she was disguised as her sister, and she was a soldier at one point. One half of the despairing duo that set Junko's plan into motion, but betrayed early on into the game to secure her sister's identity. Perhaps we could benefit, perspective-wise, from seeing a world in which she wasn't taken out of the game so soon. Perhaps this could lead to a world where everyone has a chance to be happy again. Seems like a big dream, but what else do we have to reach for, right? Might as well let ourselves imagine. This is a retrospective of a story about exactly that. A retrospective about Danganronpa IF. Did you know? The first Danganronpa actually had a scrapped true ending that could only be obtained after completing the game more than once. The premise of Danganronpa IF, to jump forward slightly, focuses on the subsequent fallout and events that transpire around Junko's killing game falling apart when Naegi receives a mysterious escape button by pure dumb luck from the Mono Mono machine. In the actual game, this item exists and can only be obtained at pure random from the Mono Mono machine when playing the game after having already completed Chapter 6. In the final game, all this button does is unlock a hidden cutscene, which is similar to the final cutscene in which the survivors open the door hatch and leave the school, but instead shows all of the students leaving in the same manner. While this cutscene would be reused as the concluding scene to Danganronpa IF later on, this was actually intended as an accompanying cutscene for said true ending that was scrapped later in development. This true ending would have been a reward for people who truly scoured the game, but would have ultimately more concretely closed the book on the story in a manner that would have made writing a sequel much harder. And with DR receiving more attention and praise than expected, it seems only natural that such a true ending would go without being implemented in the end if it would potentially jeopardize Danganronpa's chances to become a franchise. This true ending, later christened Danganronpa Another End, was included in script format with one of the Japanese Blu-ray box set releases of the Danganronpa 3 anime, and goes a little something like this. The player, after finishing the game once before, would clear the first in-game week on a new playthrough and then go to the gym before the first victim is killed. There, they find Monokuma standing there. By talking to him, they begin the true ending route, prompting a conversation. Ah, look who's here. It's you. I see. Who are you again?
I'm Naegi. Makoto Naegi.
Oh, right. I remember now. Naegi. And it just so happens I remembered something I shouldn't have. I don't want to beat around the bush. You came here because you wanted to see the true ending, right?
Huh?
Oh, so it's like that, huh? You already finished the game at least once, and yet you came back here for no reason. In other words, you're just totally fed up with the ending to the story, huh?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've had no idea this entire time.
It's fine, I get it. You don't have to say anything. I've got a spirit ready to serve wrapped up in my stuffing. My job is to satisfy unsatisfied customers. Up to. So that's why I'm giving you this. An illustration appears of the escape button.
What the heck is this?
Yes, he says, even though he already knows, it's a key. A key.
A key?
So you're fed up with the ending of the story, and so you want to see the end of the world, right? Then go ahead and look at the end of the world, at the true ending.
Seriously, what have you been going on about this whole time?
However, there are two things I need to warn you about. First, if you don't collect all the hopes, that button won't work. You gotta share the wealth. Then second, the true ending is, in other words, true despair. It's nothing more than the end of the world. If you don't want to end the world, it'd be more prudent to avoid using that button. But do whatever you want.
What was that? True ending? End of the world? And then this switch? I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. Guess it's just my imagination.
After this, the player would then need to go to the entrance hall again before the first victim is killed, and this will start an event.
Everyone? There, everyone had gathered. 14 aside from me. 14 Hope's Peak students. Everyone? Why?
Well, Monokuma told us about that.
That we could leave with Naegi if we cast aside our hope. What?
That's the condition for getting to leave here.
That guy's only got interest in us if we're hopeful super high school levels.
In other words, if we all forgot our super high school level paths, he doesn't care if we leave or not.
Your back can't change into your stomach, you know.
I do not care. That is because I am perfect. Even if I throw away my position as the heir to the Togami conglomerate, I will still without a doubt succeed.
You've got super high school level confidence, don't you?
Being an idol was my dream. But more importantly, my precious group mates are out there. So I want to try my best once more, with them. Even if we aren't idols, I want us to do our best together.
There's more than one path. Even if one path is closed off to us, we can follow a different one. Real despair is not being able to move forward.
As long as we keep moving forward, we'll be able to find hope. So going forward itself is hope.
How come you guys are stealing the show? Quit chewing the scenery.
Naegi, press the button. What you hold in your hand is the hopeful key to our future. The thing I'm holding in my hand. The key. The key of hope.
My dream was to become the Prime Minister and correct the morals of this country, but it's fine. I'll aim to be a farmer from now on. I'll correct the country's morals from an agricultural viewpoint.
I'm really in trouble, aren't I? I lost my quick and easy way to make money. I suppose it can't be helped. I'll sell my own handmade clothing to make money. However, they will be expensive. That is because they'll be made with my love.
That's right. I suppose I will go traveling for a time. Wouldn't be a bad thing to see that world firsthand.
If you take fighting from me, I have nothing left. Therefore, I will continue fighting. However, fighting is not limited just to that of the physical body. From now on, I shall engage in a spiritual fight. My fight within my own self. That is the path I shall walk.
I've decided. I've decided on the name Asahina Donuts. Everyone come by and buy them, okay? I'll make sure to offer you great service.
So, the crazy times are over. I'm retiring. Guess I'll become a carpenter or something.
Hey, big bro. In a bit. That's okay, right?
This is a good chance for me. I want to train both my heart and my body. I want to train more and more to get stronger. If I do that, I'd like to meet with you all again. When that happens, it will be as my true self.
Isn't this lucky? Because now I can quit baseball fair and square. I'll go from model to voice talent and snatch a chance at becoming a household name.
For right now, I want to be in love. Then, I want to have a happy married life. Who was that? Who just laughed? I'll kill you! I'm going to talk to my comrades and decide what to do next. But no matter what path we take in life, we will always be precious friends to each other. So that's why I'm fighting alongside you. So long as we're together, there's nothing we can't do. I've decided once and for all to set my sights on being a thief. With the free use of my magic, I'll be able to go around stealing gems. There's no need for me to tell you any more than that.
I'll, do that, that... I'll figure something out.
I suppose first I need to start by searching for something. What I should do. What I can do. Reset everything in my life so far. Yet, I look forward to that. Ever since I was a kid, I was always compared to her, my capable little sister. But I ran away, into a world where I knew no one and no one knew me. Yet, I was always lost. So then I came back. But I was still lost. About if it's right for me to keep disguising myself as my sister. So, this might be my chance to change my life. To tell the truth, I've always had an interest in being a hairdresser or something like that. Maybe I'll run off into the boonies where she won't find me and aim to be a hairstylist.
The things we would do next. The things we would do to search for hope. That is the true hope. If that's the case, then this should be hope too, right? That's right. There's no reason to be afraid. Let's go. Let's keep going forward. With everyone. All of us together. We'll leave here and go on to the next thing.
The true ending is, in other words, true despair. It's nothing more than the end of the world. If you don't want to end the world, it'd be more prudent to avoid using that button.
Huh? No. I don't need to worry about it. It's too late. That guy's words, right?
As the escape movie plays, the screen slowly fades to white. It returns to the entrance hall from earlier in the prologue, when Naegi's vision went swirly. The entrance hall is normal, with no steel plates, or gates, or anything.
Huh? Did I space out? And in the entrance hall, too. It's probably because last night I was doing prep for today and I was up late. And also, I had that weird dream. There was that strange bear, my strange classmates, and that strange survival game. And on top of that, as luck would have it, I participated a lot in everything that happened. Just remembering it is embarrassing. What an embarrassing dream. I should go home after all. I'm more cut out for a normal life. This school isn't some place where you can get by on luck. It isn't suited for people who have embarrassing dreams about killing games. Right. I'm going home. Then I put my back to the entrance hall and left. After a while, I completely forgot the dream I had that time.
As a black screen takes over, the words Game Over slowly fill the screen, ending the scrapped ending of Danganronpa 1. Wow, what a quirky little idea, huh? It's very thematically different in a few ways than what ultimately ended up coming out of DR1, even if some things still seem pretty consistent. I don't really know how I feel about the whole it was all a dream lampooning, but otherwise I actually think the idea of everyone willingly giving up their talents and striving to make it on something else is kind of fascinating, considering how ambivalent Hope's Peak has been shown to be throughout the series, when it comes to anything that isn't a person's hyper-specific talents and utility. It reads sort of like a denial of that prospect outright, and while I think other entries would refine this argument a lot more cohesively, like with the ending of Super Danganronpa 2, it's kind of cool to see how these ideas were already being floated around in some fashion even before that was ever thought up. For as many inconsistencies as the Danganronpa series vision has entailed over time, this reminds me that there was indeed a point for a good chunk of the series' lifespan where it was all pretty cohesive. Not that it never made any missteps, Ultra Despair Girl certainly disproves that notion, but it was all pretty focused, and I think this makes its later shortcomings a bit frustrating in retrospect, but hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The point is, there was a lot of untapped potential here, and though this ending was scrapped in development, the skeleton of what it was would be brought back out and retooled for something that built upon its ideas, in the form of an alternate universe short story that was packaged with Danganronpa 2, unlocked when you complete the game. That story was Danganronpa IF. This story, written by Ryogo Narita of Baccano and Durarara fame, doesn't simply give a new spin to the scrapped ending, but actually uses it as an interesting basis for not just an alternate everyone lives ending, but also an opportunity to flesh out one of the characters that up until this point we knew the least about. In the original game, all we could really get to know about Mukuro Ikusaba was what we could glean from her free time events, and even then, they are somewhat obscured by her attempts to roleplay her sister. We learn that she's been homeless before, and seeing as her weight is honestly rather low for her height, combining this knowledge together, it becomes pretty telling and sad that one of her most loved items you can present her with is rations. She very likely knows what it's like to constantly go without. She talks about wanting to pursue different dreams, but not really knowing how, and feeling immature for even yearning for it. This, combined with her seeming genuine connection with Naegi, and how she seems to really enjoy talking with him, suggests quite a bit, and even though it's vague, it is pretty tragic knowing her fate. Plenty of incentive to see what a better path for her could be like, right? As mentioned before, the story opens with Naegi receiving the escape button. However, instead of following with a soul-searching journey about abandoning their talents, Naegi pressing the button only gets him joy-buzzed. At first, he thinks it's just a bad prank, but it persists with giving him terrible headaches until eventually, when Sayaka Mizuno arrives at his door with the intention to carry out her room swap plan, featured in the original game's first chapter, he passes out. Deciding that Naegi's health is of more concern, she aborts her plan to kill Leon Kuwata midway through and has him escorted to the nurse's office. There, he's watched over by who he thinks is the lovably brazen fashionista Junko Enoshima, but who we know is actually her sister, Mukuro Ikusaba. He converses with her for some time while feeling the nagging sensation that he's talking to someone else. It quickly becomes obvious to the reader, if not Naegi himself, that the button was no simple prank, but has actually started to gradually unravel the forced amnesia he was given by having his memories taken away from him. By the time everyone is gathered in the gym for an explanation of the class trial system, it's true that things have changed in that nobody has died yet, so they don't have much motivation to kill, but some things evidently remain the same. Ikusaba stomps forward haughtily, rehearsing what we find out is a script, dedicated to her supposed defiance of Monokuma. To Ikusaba, she knows this plan well, knows that her sister plans to drop her into a secret dungeon somewhere where she can briefly after be taken out of the game in secret and be given the blessing of cooperating with her twin. But to us, we already know that what Junko promised her isn't what's gonna happen. And as he's filled with a sense of impending dread, sparked by his strange memories and feeling of familiar malice coming from Monokuma, Naegi sprints towards her, calling out to her by her real name to move, allowing her to dodge the spears she was killed by in the original game. This is where things really start to come off the rails. As we take our central POV with Ikusaba herself for the rest of the story, we get to see a bit of her inner workings and how she thinks, and this is already very enlightening to her character in a way that we were not previously able to see. As Naegi asks weakly why she's dressed up like her sister, he passes out from blood loss, shocking everyone. Naturally, everyone is confused about what's going on, but before Ikusaba can convince them of her own narrative, or even really present one at all, Junko does what she does best and rolls with the punches, telling all of the students that Monokuma has been hacked by someone from the outside named Beshki Mararai, and claims that both Ikusaba and Naegi are terrorists that were responsible for setting the killing game into motion. Not only is Junko intentionally throwing her sister under the bus here, but in fact, if you've read Danganronpa 0, you'll note that her choice of name for the mysterious hacker she's just invented is something of a multi-layered dig. You see, back in DR0, there was a character named Ishiki Mararai, who was the super high school level bodyguard. Upon being killed, however, it's revealed over the course of the book that he was only one of 8 identical siblings, including Nishiki, Mishiki, Yoshiki, Sashiki, Roshiki, Shishiki, and Yashiki. All of them had superhuman synchronization skills and used them to simultaneously pose as one person, allowing them to spread out and tackle situations as a highly coordinated unit, with their collective and true talent being that of the super high school level multiple birth siblings. All of the Mararai siblings presented trouble for Junko and would constantly pop up under their deceased brother's identity before they were eventually all killed in combat against, you guessed it, Mukuro Ikusaba herself. The name Beshki, written in Japanese, takes the shiki common in each of the brothers' names, but makes a joke out of it that only Mukuro would understand, as the kanji betsu in Beshki literally means another or extra, basically making the fake name that Junko uses resemble something along the lines of another Mararai sibling, both making reference to something that only Ikusaba would remember at this point, but perhaps even intentionally jabbing at the fact that she killed them all. Anywho, this quickly, predictably, makes all of the students super confused, and they're definitely not inclined to take Ikusaba's side, considering she can't keep her disguise up, and the kids are all desperate for some kind of escape, which this Mararai character seems to be offering them the chance of. Realizing that she, unlike her sister, is no master manipulator, Ikusaba tries to use the only skill she does have to get Naegi some help before he can bleed to death. Grabbing him, she tries to fight her way out of the gym, coming to blows with Sakura Ogami. Realizing midway through the fight that she has no chance of beating her, she instead bolts for Fukawa. Since only her memory hasn't been erased, she recalls the literary progeny's deep dark secret and knocks her out intentionally to bring out her alter, Genocider Sho, whose theatrics and antics do plenty to distract and confuse everyone who sees them for what they think to be the first time. While everyone is suitably fixated on Sho's total tonal whiplash compared to Fukawa before her, Ikusaba leaves the gym carrying Naegi, looking for a way to treat his wounds, only noticed by Kyoko Kirigiri, who remains silent and doesn't call attention to her. Pondering the fact that she's seriously turning against Junko and that her sister really did just try to kill her, Ikusaba carries Naegi off to the infirmary. While in the gym, Sakura and Genocider Sho fight with one another. Using the fact that multiple Monokumas can be used at once throughout the school, Junko summons one to mock Ikusaba openly in the infirmary, making innuendo about her and Naegi and just generally doing everything she can to get her down. This is, for my money, probably one of the most interesting and hauntingly depicted parts of the entire story, and also probably the most well-written material of these two's relationship that has ever existed within the Danganronpa series. As Monokuma, Junko navigates the conversation with her sister in a fittingly contradictory way, refusing to acknowledge herself openly as Junko, content to play dumb as Monokuma until the end, but still taking every opportunity she can to insult and lambaste Ikusaba in all the ways that only her sister would be able. All the while, the older twin can only apologize profusely. Even as she's trying to be defiant, assert herself, and break away from Junko's control, that kind of abuse, pain, and guilt, it doesn't just go away at a moment's notice. Even knowing she's been betrayed, she tries to rationalize her own situation, make excuses for Junko, so that she can go on believing that they truly understand and care for one another, even as Junko only does everything in her power to make Ikusaba feel worse. Amidst the theatricism, the typical Monokuma role-playing, I feel like this is one of those standout times in the whole series where you can actually see Junko underneath the act, read between the lines of playful sadism, and start to glimpse the actual palpable malice and cynicism underneath it all, and it's pretty chilling.
Is this all because Naegi was the first person to smile at you? You, a disappointing, depressing, unladylike, inhuman killing machine.
We've seen how Ikusaba yearned to change, and now here Junko is throwing her inability to right back in her face. We never knew the reason she left to join Fenrir all those years ago, but we know she eventually came back for her sister. And the ambiguous strain in their relationship that exists in this gap is both nebulous but still powerfully apparent. Ikusaba's own insecurity about how inhuman and cold she is exacerbated by Junko, gleefully capable of bringing it to the forefront both with her demands and the way she weaponizes that insecurity, drives it into Ikusaba like a knife and twists it whenever she becomes just a bit too convinced that maybe, just maybe, she could be normal and lovable to someone else. She even tries to convince Ikusaba to kill Naegi here and now by her own hands, saying that if she does, she'll avoid his inevitable rejection when he realizes what horrible things she's done, and in the process will remain hers forever, by virtue of having his last concerned thoughts and moments stolen away by her.
It's not like you were dating Naegi or anything. You were just watching him from afar the whole time. Man, you're so shy. You can shoot people's hearts and brains no problem, but you can't even woo some stupid boy into liking you.
The whole time, the only thing Ikusaba can do to withstand her sister's torture is to desperately tell herself it's all Monokuma, not Junko. But even so, there's a huge disconnect between that naive hope and the truth she really knows. She can't actually believe that premise. And it's that inability to escape the reality of her abuse while still fiercely trying to reject it that makes her dedication to Junko and fear of her so devastating to witness. Ever since she was a child, Ikusaba believed that she was meant to spread despair because of her sister. She didn't harbor any ill will toward the world, she simply accepted she was meant to spread despair, and chose to walk the same path as her sister. The doubt she felt was only a recent development. When Junko told her about the plan, when she watched the world burn at the hands of terrorists wearing Monokuma masks, she never wavered once. However, as soon as she heard about her sister's plan to make their classmates kill each other, Naegi included, a strange feeling began to stir within her. What started as a seed of doubt soon grew into a thorny vine ensnaring Ikusaba's feet. As soon as she disguised herself as Junko and finished meeting the other students, as soon as she had confirmed that everyone's memories had been completely taken away, that vine began tightening around Ikusaba's heart. They're gone. Junko's the only one who knows about me now. That's it. But that's no problem. It's just like old times. Things will never go back to how they used to be, but that's fine. This should be fine. That's what abuse often is. Isolation. The feeling that only that one person can understand you. A feeling they foster in you themselves. A feeling that should be plainly contradicted by the very way that they treat you when they have you alone, but even then, you can't escape. Because you feel like you've cut off your only remaining avenues to do so. You feel like you have nowhere or no one else to turn to. And so you stay glued to the floor, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I wonder which part of you is a wolf anyway. You're just a dog that blindly follows Junko's orders. What does the tattoo on your hand even mean? Are you just a bitch who's pledged her loyalty to her owner? I bet Fukawa would say that. I'm positive.
Attacking her in the open, Ikusaba can't help her war-weary instincts of dodging every blow that comes her way. All the while, she can only continue to apologize, begging that she can't fight Junko because she's the only person left who can understand her sister, perhaps hoping in vain to be the only one who can look out for her, in a world where she herself has cut off all routes for her escape by casting herself as the main antagonist of a worldwide tragedy she doomed it to. What follows is easily, in my opinion, one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire series, as Junko puts their fight to a hard stop by appearing on the single infirmary monitor, without a disguise, without a voice filter. She appears as her honest self, stares her sister in the eyes, and begins to speak gently. Despite the calm and the sweetness of her words, and perhaps even the actual genuine intent behind them, Ikusaba can only shiver in fear, realizing the weight of what those words mean in the here and now. I'm grateful to you, Mukuro.
I mean it. I'm really sorry. I said so many mean things to you. I even tried to kill you earlier. And I was about to make you do something horrible just now. Even though I know about your feelings towards Naegi, you don't have to force yourself. Even if you didn't notice, it was totally obvious to anyone who was looking at you. You never cared about the class photos, but when Naegi said he was going to take one, you made sure you were facing the camera. And then, Junko Enoshima, the super high school level despair, flashed a smile. A pure, sweet smile. On the monitor, she looked like a normal high school girl, teasing her older sister, and yet, Ikusaba could feel despair and anxiety encasing themselves around her. I always thought you should have tried hard to take pictures with Naegi, but I guess that's what makes you so disappointing. Still, even though you're disappointing and annoying, I still love you. Ikusaba trembled upon hearing those words. I love you. That's all she ever wanted to hear her sister say. Ikusaba believed, no matter what Junko said, she really believed she loved her. She believed she was the only one who could understand the despair known as Junko Enoshima. She was naive. As soon as she heard Junko say, I love you, Ikusaba realized she never completely understood her sister. It was only at this moment that Ikusaba finally understood her sister's feelings. Junko's words right now were kind. Perhaps that kindness was completely honest. The words I love you might have been true as well. However, for Junko Enoshima, this was her way of saying goodbye. She was severing the ties between them. It was painfully clear to Ikusaba. And then, before she could even say anything, the girl in the monitor made a remark that cut Ikusaba to the bone. I'm sure someday you'll make your dreams come true. SHSL despairs never talked to each other like this. A simple truth stabbed into Ikusaba's heart. Junko had no further use for her. Her own sister was parting ways with her. Ikusaba had dedicated over 10 years of her life to the cause of SHSL despair, and at this moment, it all counted for nothing. But those years no longer mattered to Ikusaba. Her sister's rejection was more than enough to send her into the depths of despair. That's why Ikusaba, even now, clung to a small sliver of hope.
With a last I love you to twist the knife, Junko departs from the screen, leaving Ikusaba in shambles. However, stealing her resolve, she takes a part of the IV pole broken when she was defending herself from Monokuma's attacks and stabs straight through him, destroying the unit, disabling its bomb, and taking out the room's surveillance camera all at once. Feeling as though in this moment she finally understands despair for what it is, and her sister by virtue of that, Ikusaba makes a vow. She'll make her sister happy. She'll fill her with despair. And she'll do that by ripping away the plan she made, the plan they made, piece by piece, until all of it goes up in smoke. This was not an act of vengeance toward the sister who had abandoned her, opines the narration. This was an act of mercy. And damn, this is Mukuro Ikusaba to me. This is who she is, and this is the relationship between herself and Junko on heartbreakingly visceral display. Leave it to the author of stories with such intricately detailed, huge casts with a multitude of backgrounds and personal histories to not only pick up on these two's unspoken nuances, but really run with them in such an impressive way that I can barely stand to see them depicted in a way that betrays the spirit of what this story established about them. I won't get into it here because that's for next time, but I'm sure by just this much alone you should understand plainly well what I find so reductive and insultingly bare bones about the way Danganronpa 3 handles their characterization, especially in relation to each other by comparison. I know this isn't technically a canon story, quote-unquote, but it still tries to remain true to the spirit of canon in its establishment of its characters, its world, and most fundamentally of all, its emotional weight. And having already spent less than an hour of its time setting up this kind of frankly absurd level of quality, I'm happy to report it only continues to escalate. After some time has passed, Sho is successfully wrangled and locked up in her room because, God bless, neither her or Fukawa get agency in DR1 even in a spin-off story. While one half of the student body stays behind to watch over her, the other searches the school to see if they can find Ikusaba and Naegi and get answers for this predicament they now find themselves in. Arriving at the nurse's office, Kirigiri finds the broken Monokuma and security camera and asks Chihiro Fujisaki to stay with her to search for clues and record everything from this point on with a laptop microphone. Finding Naegi in a bed that is in a blind spot from the doors, she sees he's being supplied a transfusion by a hidden blood pack, and shortly after finds Ikusaba hiding by clinging to the bottom of the bed, explaining that she noticed because of the slight incline of the bed itself. Resigned to the fact that she has no real option aside from confessing, Ikusaba tells her story to Kirigiri outright, albeit not convinced that the other will take her at her word. Deducing based on everything that's happened so far, however, Kirigiri seems pretty convinced. Though she does briefly speculate on whether they were all just random people without any talents who were implanted with 16 years worth of false memories, which... no comment. In a surprisingly sweet turn of events, Ikusaba heads off on her own to deal with Junko, but offers her thanks to Kirigiri for listening to her. Roundaboutly, Kirigiri offers her help by saying that she'll make sure Naegi stays safe while Ikusaba fights, and though she responds awkwardly that she doesn't really work well with others, seemingly a bit sheepish, she bows her head and says she'll do her best as she leaves. Anybody gonna ship these two while we're at it, or just me? As Ikusaba leaves, Chihiro fearfully glances at information that basically confirms everything they were just discussing, by finding in Monokuma's control system that his operating system was stolen from Chihiro's own artificial intelligence work that was only in its ongoing developmental stages upon the start of the class's school year. Entering the main hall, Ikusaba encounters a group of Monokuma units that all proceed to attack her in a torrent. The hordes swarm around her, but she fends them off with her pipe and military training prowess. All the while, Junko claims that she can just reset everything back to zero by stealing the students' memories again and again until the game gets its proper start. Determined to see her friends to the outside world, Ikusaba uses the only talent she feels she has to fend her sister off, and not only that, but communicates to her in the only way she knows how. For the first time, Junko was using a language her sister actually recognized. The child of despair who tore the world apart was speaking to her sister with the language of power. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to fill with something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Junko, and she learned hope from her acts of violence. For Ikusaba, who had no interest in this world, this small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of her perfect world. This disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment, who knew of no other way to live, continued her lonely dance. She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair which accompanies the music of hope. The fight rages on, but of course Junko's not one to play fair, and tries to distract Ikusaba by playing a voice recording of Naegi telling her to look out from earlier over one of the Monokuma's speakers. It causes her to lose focus for just a split second long enough to land a few hits, resulting in her being pinned to the ground. As she is, Junko even taunts that she's going to remove Ikusaba's memory of her entire sense of identity, which is practically worse than death in her eyes, as it means she'd be completely unable to even have a connection to her sister at that point. Planning to do a little quick and dirty torture, she calls in a motorcycle, which makes its cameo appearance from Owada's execution in the original DR1. Much to her surprise, though, when it's wheeled in, it doesn't stay in her control for long, as Owada himself comes barreling in on it to save Ikusaba, saying that though he doesn't necessarily trust her, he can't stand to watch a girl getting ganged up on and mistreated no matter who it is. Man literally rode in on the seat meant to kill him and prevented a death. Did you get the feeling yet that I think If is cool as hell? Trying her best to adopt her hacker persona and get him to reconsider, Junko protests, but he refuses and escapes the hordes of Monokumas giving chase, with assistance from Sakura, who intervenes to fight them. With everyone huddled near the front gate, a finally conscious Naegi included, we find that he's already gotten everyone on board by convincing the rest of the students of the outside world state with his newly regained memories of their time together at Hope's Peak, allowing them to see that he's being genuine. Believing that Naegi could only ever see her as a traitor and a murderer at this point, Ikusaba is surprised to find that he calls her a friend. He even calls back to Ikusaba's free time events we discussed from the first game itself.
Dreams are meant to change as you grow up, right? Depending on where you're at, kindergarten, elementary school, junior high, high school, I've had the same dream since I was a little kid. I've been rushing toward it ever since, so I've never really had to think all that hard about my dreams. But what's wrong with that? It just means you still feel the same way about it, right? That's what I used to think. But if it doesn't change, your possibilities can't grow, right? That's how new opportunities are born. And up until now, I never did that. I never let my dreams grow. All I saw was that one dream. I put everything I had into that one narrow little world. I feel like there's so much more I could be doing that I'm not. I don't like that feeling. So I think I'm going to start looking for it. Is it childish of me to think like that? Am I just being a baby? No, not at all. I'm the same way. I'm still trying to figure out what it is I want to do. And sometimes I feel like I'll never find it. I feel like maybe I'll spend the rest of my life looking for it. But I'm not sure it's even about finding it or not finding it. Maybe the important thing is that you're looking for it. Do you really think I can walk another path at this point? I don't know what you can do,
or even what I can do. But I think it's more important to look for that path instead of actually finding it.
Of course, it wouldn't be Junko Enoshima if she didn't concoct a final gauntlet to end all final gauntlets, and so, coming totally clean, she proposes a final exam for the captives, with a simple rule to dictate it. She says that if they succeed, they can all leave, but if they fail, they'll all have their memories reset and have the killing game start over from scratch. She even tries for a moment to humiliate Mizuno by trying to prod out of her what she was planning to do to Leon the prior day, but before she can collapse, the Monokuma that Junko is speaking through is destroyed when Leon comes to her rescue, tossing Hagakure's crystal ball directly into it and crushing its voice box. Again, this is such a cathartic, sweet, and heart-wrenching moment, knowing both the relationship these two have to each other in the regular game, and even the fact that said crystal ball was used by Leon for a much more horrific end in that version of events. It's fittingly sweet, and even feels like a nice thematic loop around to see this version of him not only get things right, but save her life, when she'd previously thought about ending his. She even decides to confess her scheme to him later, though when she says she has to talk to him about something afterward, he basically just assumes she means she's going to confess her love to him, which is both hilarious and kind of cute, admittedly. Anywho, the final exam is pretty simple. Their promise for freedom will be fulfilled if they can get their hands on the escape switch at the front gate within 15 seconds of the start of the test. There's a horde of Monokumas in the way, and they're all about to start self-destructing, which makes it both extremely difficult to reach the switch in time, and extremely hazardous because of the flames. Betting on her sister's need to see her twin crumble in despair, Ikusaba takes a risk, playing on her newfound understanding of Junko that she correctly guesses the other will have underestimated. Throwing the pole to destroy the Monokuma self-destruct system, it catches it perfectly, and in the split second when Junko stops to survey Ikusaba's despair-ridden face, she's not there. Because in that same moment, she's gotten Sakura to propel her through the air with a kick, allowing her to shoot forward, grapple the pole, finish the job firsthand while dodging the flames, and grab the switch. As the unit shuts down, Junko laments her disappointment in Ikusaba for putting her faith in others. Ikusaba simply responds with a reiteration of her promise, to stop any and all chance of Junko's plans from proceeding further, to offer her the truest despair of a spectacular and thorough defeat. Though Junko is beaten for now, she still claims to have plans on the horizon for a certain interesting island she's been eyeing, and she makes it clear that the students will have to return here eventually if they want to restore their memories, as still hidden within the school are the research notes of one Yasuke Matsuda, the super high school level neurologist from Danganronpa 0, whose techniques were harnessed through experiments by Junko herself in order to wipe her class's memories in the first place. Holding the last Monokuma gingerly in her arms, Ikusaba seals all of her despair away, vowing that it will only emerge in one final, brilliant storm when the time comes that she can fully unleash it on her sister, when it will be the end of them both. Heading out into that uncertain world once again with a crowd much less shy of people, Naegi is surrounded by his friends, alive and well. Ikusaba plans to take responsibility for her part in all of this, donning her disguise once more. The other students know all about her by now, but they still forgive her, as their classmate, as their friend. Knowing that she'll be shunned by those who despise her for the downfall of society, and by those lingering loyal despairs who will view her as a traitor, Ikusaba vows to not kill anyone who comes after her for revenge. Hoping to understand everyone by existing in a position where one simply cannot belong, she agrees, along with the survivors, to open the door to an uncertain future. The world that awaits them outside is no more certain than the one that awaited the final 6 in the regular timeline of events, but honestly, I think they'll be fine. We can spend all of our time asking ourselves, what if this happens? What if that happens? But we'll never know, until we have the courage to take that first step. And that's why I think Danganronpa IF is so starkly successful at even just the small bit it tries to do. It's not a huge story, but it doesn't need to be. It takes what made the original so effective and elaborates upon its themes in interesting ways. It offers a better view of characters who, while we didn't need to see this side of them, is still greatly supplemental to our understanding of them in the main story, without being too exposition-heavy or ruining any of the magic of what was still kept relatively vague. They added so much dimension to Ikusaba, who previously had very little we actually concretely knew about her, and in demonstrating her traits in Solitude, and especially when it came to her relationship with Junko, we got an exceedingly genuinely heartbreaking but evocative image of a person whittled by responsibility, imperfect and selfish in her own ways, but also tattered, broken, and looking for some kind of salvation in someone else. Something she could learn, albeit a bit late, to channel into something better, even if she had to break her own heart in the process. Ironically, despite being partially responsible for all of this, I think Ikusaba comes out of this story being one of the most likable and admirable characters, and it's both emotionally gripping to see her struggle and cathartic to see her victory, everyone's victory over Junko and over themselves and their own demons. What Junko Enoshima had above all else was an appeal to nature, a call to the darkness in everyone's hearts that she forced everyone to confront by the situation she produced, and the results she fine-tuned. But here and now, she doesn't even get to have that anymore. Her artificiality, her spite, and her leading questions have all faltered before the finish line. We've fallen for her game several times, and eventually somebody has to have the power to say that enough is enough. It's hard. It's scary, it's lonely to emerge into a world like that, especially when you have no proof, no unwavering confidence that things will turn out how you want them to. They could go horribly off the rails. That's the chance you take when you ask yourself a question like, what if? But what matters is that you dared to ask anyway, right? Regardless of the answer you reach, you started the journey. You took that first step. Maybe looking for it is what counts most. Maybe that's why we should even try at all.
I'm only human. I've got a skeleton in me, but I'm not the villain. Despite what you're always preaching, call me a traitor. I'm just collecting victims. They're getting stronger. I hear them calling. Stop the whole world. I'll stop the whole world from turning into a monster, eating us alive. Don't you ever wonder how we survive? Well, now that you're gone, the world is ours. I'll stop the whole world. I'll stop the whole world from turning into a monster, eating us alive. Don't you ever wonder how we survive? Well, now that you're gone, the world. I'll stop the whole world. I'll stop my whole world from turning into a monster and eating us alive. Don't you ever wonder how we survive? Now that you're gone, the world is ours.
Hey y'all, thanks for watching my little filler video. The DR3 video is still being worked on, but I think it'll be pretty fun in the way we're doing it compared to the previous DR videos, so hopefully that'll be worth the wait. Would have gotten this one out sooner, but there was a lot of stuff going on that I just had to... Well, needless to say, it was pretty complicated. Glad I got to talk about IF to some extent anyway, because as you can probably tell by what I said about it, I think it's definitely worth a look, especially if you're a fan of the series who hasn't checked it out yet. As always, subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't already and want to see more content from me. Join my Patreon link below if you want to support the channel and get some special bonuses, or donate to my Ko-fi if you prefer your support as a little more of a one-time affair. Follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and feel free to send me something via my P.O. box at Throne if you have ever had the urge. Thank you as always for watching, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all for the Danganronpa 3 video, whenever that comes out. Peace!